That's better. That'll work. Maybe. Hell yeah. That figures. Yeah. Try that. Hungry? Yeah, don't mind if I do. I could use a snack. See, folks, I maintain my stuff so it actually runs. Start, you bastard! Okay, well howdy folks, welcome back. Our all for this purpose here, of course, which you probably figured out is gonna try to get this sidecar lined up at least and see what we need. I'm gonna stay off the lapel mic for this since I'm very close to the phone, so you don't really need it and the sound's probably better anyway. I'm gonna go over some stuff about sidecars and kind of give you an idea as to what I'm looking for and what you need to have as far as your setup goes to make the thing basically work. Now, right now you can take a look and, you know, it's not a terribly large sidecar, but it's not terribly small either. That's not a terribly large bike either. So, frankly, I would prefer to see a little bit of a smaller chair, and we call them chairs actually, the entire sidecar. So if I refer to it as that, that's what I mean, than a bigger one like this. But we're going to see how she lines up. Now, this is, I don't know about this. I mean, it looks a little wonky, but then again, my hookup looks like some engineer got some LSD in an erector set, so I guess I can't say much. All right, so the important things about sidecar lineup and how you line up. There's two basic things. Number one is the offset of the center of the rear axle to the center of the third wheel, the chair's wheel, the sidecar's wheel. Generally speaking, you want to shoot for between 9 and 11 inches of offset. That's forward offset. So this wheel should be about 9 to 11 inches forward of the rear wheel of the tug, as we would call it, the motorcycle. So that's the first thing. I don't know if that's the case now or not, but just eyeing it in because, you know, I'm fairly lined up with this bottom back lower. Well, maybe not, but I'm close. And just by eyeing it in, we actually are probably about there. So that's not too bad. Now, what you saw me do before was transfer it over from where it was stored over to a table. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my Harbor Freight table up to exactly the same height as my air table, my lift table. And then what I'll do is I will level the tables as much as possible. And then what I will do is I will make sure that the bike is level, or I should say plumb, this way. Another key thing to keep in mind is when you're setting one of these up, you want to make sure that the tires you have on it are the ones that you're going to ride it with. Because if you change the tire size, you're going to change the angle of the dangle, you're going to change the dynamics and the geometry, and it may not work right. Now, my best knowledge is the customer is going to go that way. I mentioned the other video that these are probably original 85 or 86 tires, or thereabouts. And I checked on bikebandit.com, these exact sizes in the Dunlop 404s, which I have on my sidecar rig, are excellent. They are available in these sizes. So we can assume that we're going to keep the same size tires on this bike. Now, if he wants to go dark-sided sometime with a rear tire or rear and front, and you can look that up yourself, that's up to him. But as far as setting up goes, this is what we're going to go off of. Want to make sure that our tire pressures are nominal in both the bike and the sidecar. I did the bike the other day. I haven't checked this one yet because all this stuff factors into geometry. The other thing, as I mentioned, I just briefly touched on it, is I want to make sure this is plumb, straight up and down. So we want it straight up and down. This is just for setup, straight up and down. And we would like to have 9 to 11 inches of forward offset of the sidecar wheel. The third aspect of it is toe in. And toe in is if you draw a line across the back of the bike, straight back from the rear tire, let's say for shits and giggles, argument's sake, there was a brake disc on this, all right? And you picked up a line from that brake disc and brought it forward. Now, naturally, the front wheel is thinner. We're not going to be worrying about that. We go off the rear wheel and we bring a line straight forward, okay? And then once we hit that line, we bring a line from this tire straight forward. And you can use the hub if you want, but as long as your height's set, you can take the wheel off and straight edge the hub if you want. And then you're looking for around 1/2 inch to 3/4 of toe in. And that means that this wheel will be angled in just a skosh toward the bike, just a little teeny bit. Now, the most important part of setting up a sidecar, which I think a lot of people don't even know about or maybe forget, is lean out. Now think about this. You have a big mass over here. You've got round motorcycle tires. If you leaned off the side of this bike to the right side, the bike is going to want to turn to the right because you're transferring weight over to that side, and it's going to want to make the bike lean over to that side. And because of the way the tires are designed and the bike's steering is designed, it's going to want to drop in. It's going to want to drop to the right and steer to the right. Well, the thing is, to counterbalance that or counteract that, what you need to do is you need to lean out the bike. So this bike, for setup purposes, initial setup is going to be plumb as much as I can get it, off the rear wheel most likely. But once I start dialing it in, I actually want to lean this out. Lean out, in other words, the lean out of the bike away from the chair, as I was explaining, is generally about 1 to 1.5 degrees. So, I use one of these degree levels, set it to about 1.3, and then up against the tire, and then get your lean out. And so again, that counters the weight of the chair being on the right side, and motorcycle tires being round, kind of wants to fall to that side and counteracts that, that mass that you're hauling around. And if you look at mine straight ahead when it's sitting on a flat piece of pavement, you can actually see that lean out a little bit. And I have had people commenting saying, hey, this thing looks like it's leaning out. Yes, it is, and I explained briefly why. But these things pulling to the right are almost always a factor of no or not enough lean out away from the chair. And people are trying to accommodate that or correct it by doing excessive towing. It doesn't work. It's not going to work. All you're going to do is make the thing handle pretty cattywampus, or not necessarily cattywampus, but like shit. and you're going to prematurely wear that chair tire. So those are the three things that we're going to be caring about here: is offset, toe in, and eventually lean out. Now for setup purposes, what I'm going to do is, this is going to get, again, brought up to the height of the table. What that tells me is, or the height of the two tables, I'm sorry. What that tells me is that the bottom of that tire is at the same height as the lift. And then we make sure it's fairly level with one another. And so then what I can do is I can use my scissor jacks underneath, and I can adjust it up and down to see where it connects or wants to connect to the motorcycle. Then I'll start dialing this in with levels and anything else that I really need to, like tape measures and things like that, and do a really rough toe in and see how that lays out, and essentially just start bringing it all together. Right, so I'm not going to be able to film all of this. It's just too complicated, and I have to be bouncing around back and forth. But what I am going to do is I'm just going to fire the camera up after I accomplish a particular task, or if something is kind of interesting in regards to how this thing goes together, and then we'll discuss that, and then we'll move on to the next clip. Will be something else. So that's what we're going to do. And you probably saw this. It's hanging off of here. This is a steering damper. It attaches here. We'll get into that later. And I'll go over why we need those. Sometimes you don't need them if they're set up correctly. I'm going to know pretty quick how this thing lines up, whether somebody did have it set up correctly. If they did not, we may try it first, not having this hooked up. But chances are we're going to need it. And again, I'm going to go into the reasons that you need those, and the issues that a third wheel with the weights hanging off the right side of the bike causes to require one of those. All right, we'll do that later. This is my setup on checking the sidecar wheel offset to the motorcycle's rear wheel. Not exact, but it's close enough. I have a straight edge with a squared end. That's a perpendicular end at 90 to it that I'm going up against the rim. Pretty square there. I cannot get, this is the center, this square here, of course, is the center of the axle. I can't get this close enough to it because the sidecar wheel is in the way, but I can certainly measure over to it. So basically, 1 3/8 is the distance from my measuring to the center of this axle on the motorcycle. I don't have another square this big, so we'll move over. What we do here is take a square. And the lift isn't exactly right. It's not exactly perfect with the other one, but like I said, this is close enough to get us an idea. I could dial this in with my tall jacks, and get the thing really accurate, but we're just looking for accuracy. Actually, we don't add that, do we? We subtract it, I'm sorry. So this would actually go that way. So let's see where we're at. See, right there, we're about 11 1/4. So if we take 1 3/8 off of there, yeah, this thing is actually about right. 11 1/4, 10 1/4 is 1 inch, and 3/8 would be 9 7/8. So 9 11. I mean, this thing is actually dialed in pretty well as far as the offset goes. So I'm happy with that. So let's call it roughly 10 inches. 9 1/2 to 10 inches would be our offset then. So closer to 10. So yeah, that's not bad. That's just one way you can do it, because we just want a rough estimate. If we're plus or minus 1/2 inch even, that's fine. But we want to get an idea that it's not 2 or 3 inches off, which it's not. So the offset's actually pretty good. I forgot to add with that offset clip that I am hooked in the bottom. You see the rear lower is hooked in just with the bolt going through, and the front lower is hooked in. So essentially we're getting basically this situation to a degree, but mostly this situation. So really it is what it is, forward to aft. So forward to aft, it is what it is. So that's why I just slid those guys in, and that's going to bring that dimension in which is the offset. So like you said, like he said, like the guy said, figure about 9 3/4. Let's split the difference, 9 3/4. So between 9 and 11 is good. So almost 10 inches. I think we're doing pretty well so far. Let's go ahead and talk about the uppers. Again, that's front lower, rear lower. Those are there. Those fit. We'll assume at this point that they're going to be okay. The only other upper we have in this particular setup is the front, because there is no rear. And I mentioned that in the other video, but I think we got a solution to that here. But let me show you the front. Now, this really is not an optimum setup. What you really want when you set a sidecar supports, the upper supports in particular, is you really want a triangle of some sort, either this way or that way, and then the rear doing the same thing. Let me show you what I mean on my Magna. You can see on the Magna, this front support angles back slightly, and the rear support angles forward quite a bit. And this is where you get that triangle. All right, and that gives a triangle is obviously a very, very solid geometrical shape as far as support goes. So what you want is that kind of a support, because it can't go anywhere. If you have two straight supports out, they're not really designed to carry that kind of load. That's more of a shear load and not a compression load. You know, it's a lateral load. You want a longitudinal load. Now it'll provide that as well, but you know, there is a slight amount of out on this one, and the back one is going to be almost pretty much straight. Now here's the problem with the back one, and I'll show you the solution. As I mentioned, there's no mount point for it, and if there was, that's way too short. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to fabricate something like I did on the Magna, a bracket out of steel that comes off the back side of this of the shock mount. So it's going to be a big hole right behind it, coming out probably the front of it, you know, kind of at an angle like that. And then I have this. This came with the parts. It's a straight. It's going to be tight, but I think with the adjustment we have there and the adjustment on that shank down there, we should be able to make it work, and I can just use a heavier steel and extend it down a little bit. That'll probably give us a little bit of triangle toward the back, doing it this way, the angle that is, but I'm not 100% sure. So, you know, it's one of these things where you got to kind of experiment when you're fabricating, but that's really the only thing I can think of to do this. The shortness of this rod here, this connector, the rear upper, leads me to believe that there must have been something either in the works or something actually on the Circus box to capture that, but I didn't see anything, so I don't even think that they got that far with it. I never took any big beefy bracket off on this bike, and of course that box was not on like, you know, like that is there, you know, welded to the frame. It was, hell, made out of aluminum. You know, I had a billion fasteners in it, but you know, the bottom line is just not really suitable for that. That's not a really good mount point. So my theory here is that they didn't get that far. I think they got it this far, and then maybe they had reworked it. Maybe there was a bracket here at one time when it was perhaps not a Circus bike, and then that was all done. I mean, because hell, that crap came way out to here. I don't even know how this would have fit. So I don't know. Basically, this may have been on it. He may have had a sidecar outfit like this, you know, complete outfit ready to go and actually on the road, and then decided to go the Circus bike route. I don't know. You know, that's, guy's dead, so we can't ask him. So basically, you know, that's it. Yeah, that's what we're gonna end up doing. I'm gonna do some fabrication. The other problem I have with this is somebody cut this shorter. I don't like that. This actual thread in here, and I wish it was a little bit longer, because it really didn't leave a whole lot for a jam nut to lock this up. You really need a jam nut to lock this up. So we can adjust this in, there's no problem, because hell, I don't even have this way set up yet. I mean, we can adjust it down here. That'll all be part of the toe-in, you know, when we rough that in. But as far as this goes, You know, we can move this out a little bit, but it really needs a jam nut. Now I measured it with my Starrett thread pitch gauge, and it's an 18 thread. Is it 18? Hang on, let me check. 16 or 18? 16, dummy. It's a 3/4 16 thread. 3/4 inch diameter, 16 threads per inch. So it's Imperial or SAE, whatever you want to call it. I don't find any of those nuts. I don't have any. I got some big nuts, but just ask the wife. This is, I don't know if this is one of them. Doesn't matter. It may be one of them. But you know what I'm going to have to do is, I don't think I'll find that at like the hardware store, but I can order in a garden variety nut. You know, it doesn't need to be grade 8 for something like that. And then face it and get it really thin and make a jam nut for it. Just do that in the lathe. So we can make one, but you know, we're going to need one there. It's all there is to it, because you can't leave this loose. There's enough play in those threads, it'll demolish this. So yeah, we're going to have to fix that. You know, this is a jam nut, for example, what I'm talking about, all right? This thread's in here, and that locks it up. So I don't see any others in the stuff I got, so we're going to have to figure that out. Okay, this is where we're at. I've got her attached and, you know, pretty well adjusted actually. Let me tell you what I initially found. When I put the lowers on, see what happens is, let me explain this first. It's easier to see this from here. All right, the lowers, there and there, front and rear, what they do, and they were already on here and set up, I didn't have to make anything, is they will essentially handle the toe in and toe out, but also the level this way. In other words, the chair's relationship to ground or level. And they do that through a number of ways depending on the sidecar. This one has some clamp tubes, which basically suck, but I'll explain in a minute what is going on with these. And then you just simply rotate them. So there's a rotation point there, and then there's one in the back. So what ended up happening was this thing was really nose low. I mean, severely, like 2-3 inches nose low. And so what I ended up doing was I loosened these clamps up. This one, that one, under that gusset, and then that one right back there, the two of them under that gusset. And then just lifted up on it, and the thing lifted right up because it started swiveling. Now, I can only go so far because it gets really close to the foot peg there. But it's level now, and I'll probably adjust it a little bit more. I don't think that's going to hit. That'd be annoying as hell, but you know, like I said, I can adjust it. And so in doing that, what ended up happening was this front support was too long. So luckily there was one of these in there. So I've changed the rear upper and the front upper. These are some additional support. This doesn't really do a whole lot. I think the objective is to keep the pivot from dropping under load. So it kind of gives it a little triangle here for that. I don't really know if it's going to help. And this is why, and I mentioned this before, this is what somebody had done. They pinned it, drilled and tapped it. So I'm going to do something different. Well, probably do the same thing but a different spot and do it a little differently. And the back's the same way. This is actually pretty damn close. I have the suspension. The suspension is already set at 0. There is some sort of a electric suspension adjustment on it, and that's the only thing that concerns me because I don't know where that is in its travel, even if it works. So the next step is going to be to mess with that. You know, we're pretty damn close with this tire here, but I got to start somewhere and then figure out where I got to go from there. So I'm assuming that this thing is low right now, and if that's the case, then we're just going to have to readjust it again. But not a big deal now that I know how to do it. Now, as far as toe in and toe out, you might be wondering why there's a fluorescent tube laying here. And this is a trick from Claude Stanley up in PA, Freedom Sidecars. Fluorescent tubes are really straight, and as long as you don't put any forces on them that'll bend them, they make excellent straight edges for this. So I just have a bungee cord that keeps it up against the rear tire just nice and easy. It's kind of slung there, if you will. And my first measurement, this thing was actually right at pretty much 0. I think it was like 55 inches or something like that to the outside of the tire. And I put about a 1/2 inch of toe in, but then I did the adjustments on raising it, so that's probably off now, so I'll have to redo that another time. And so yeah, let me get back here and we'll kind of take a look at it from the rear. So there's nothing to measure. I mean, I can measure the horizontal right here, but it looks like it might be bent. That part underneath there looks like a mastodon's intestines, so that ain't gonna work. But there is a straight part of the frame this way and that way, and so I put my level on those two, and they're pretty damn close. Close enough for now, because now it's really dial-in time. But like I said, I'm not sure about this deal, because like I said, that is pretty damn close. So I got to figure this out. Maybe go online, try to find a manual for this. And there is an electrical plug on the other side. I don't know what wires do what, but I can figure it out. There's also a plug down here. I can just unplug it and put power to it and see what it does. Yeah, it's definitely coming along. The objective here is not only to get this, of course, ultimately into a sidecar that works, but I just need to hook these two up and then get it out of here, and then move on to other things, and then bring it back in periodically and do some more work on it here and there. But I wanted to at least get it this far to see what I needed to do or buy or anything. So far I've been able to find everything, so yeah, not too bad at all. The electrical, like I said, there's a plug on it. Let's take a look at that real quick. Yeah, this is a DIN plug, and I don't know if that's power or not. That is definitely power, but it looks like a trailer connector, so I would assume that's lights. I would think that this may be for that suspension motor. I don't know. All right, as far as the rear upper goes, as I mentioned in an earlier part of the video, or I don't know, the other video, there wasn't any rear upper mount, and so I was able to fabricate some. This is what I did. Found some stuff that I cut up, which was already in a 90-degree format and that thick, okay, which is about what, I don't know, 1.75 inches, 2 inches. And I took one piece, drilled a big hole in it with a hole saw, kind of like this, which was my first attempt, which was an abortion. What I ended up doing was a similar bigger hole, which goes over the, there's a kind of a, the way this is welded into the frame, this standoff for the shock, it's a lot of weld, so it's a taper. It's almost like a slant, it's a taper, it's a bevel. And so I made that so it slips over that bevel, and did some grinding here and there, just a little teeny bit on the actual bike side, not only to clean it up, but to get some high spots out of the weld. So that's fit nice and flush. And there's plenty of clearance behind this thing to actually weld between the actual metal of the bike and the bracket. So I kind of filled in that spot, but enough that that's definitely going to stay. Now I don't really like welding on motorcycle frames for any reason when you're doing this kind of stuff. For repairing a crack or something, or doing something like that, yeah, that's fine. But for doing something like this, I always try to do a bolt-on option. The only reason why I did do it is because that one up there in the front is already welded on. That's how it came, so I figured, what the hell. So how this works, of course, is this part's welded in. It bends around. This is a removable section. You can see there's bolts right there, 2 of them, M8s. And then it comes around, captures the actual bolt for the shock tower itself, or the shock mount, I should say. And then I welded a nut in here, and it's the same, obviously the same threads as this. Just so happens that this acorn nut on the back cap nut works really well to lock that in. That's actually one of these. What I ended up doing was I took one of these, because the threads were perfect, and I machined off the end so it's a through bolt, and then welded it in here. So it's not a grade 8, but you don't need it. You don't need super hard hardware on this kind of stuff. There isn't that much load on it. There really isn't. And if you look on this thing, there's all regular hardware, probably grade 5, and that's going to be just fine. So that's welded in. That keeps it from this from backing out. It's basically a lock for this, and then of course it goes down to there. So this needs to come back off, of course. I need to do some detail grinding on it around these edges and clean it all up, paint the side on the bike, paint this, and then let it dry and then put it all back on. So of course the seat clears. I made sure of that. Now I don't have that passenger seat yet, so I was a little concerned whether or not the passenger seat would come down and impact this, but I'm going to round this off pretty generously anyway. And you know, it has a helmet lock thing here, so obviously the seat can't go down that far, you know, so it must come to about here and go up, which that's what I'm suspecting. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I covered that back mount. Yeah, anyway, that's gonna be it on this video. I just wanted to show you the sketchy lift and deploy strategy on getting it on the other lift and then getting it lined up and getting it hooked up. So yeah, I don't have anything tight really. I'm not going to do that right now. Like I said, I want to get this suspension side of it taken care of and make any other adjustments, and then we'll get it out of here. So when I finally get it on the road, I'll shoot some footage of it, but until then I think we're going to be done with this. This is just a quick video on this particular stage of the projecto. So if you like this kind of stuff, don't hesitate to subscribe, ring the bell on the channel, you get notified when I put up some other junk like this, and of course like the video if you indeed like it. Until next time, as always, don't just repair, restore. Catch you on the next video.